Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Red Hour, a show I do twice a week where I introduce a little bit of chaos into Star Trek by reviewing a random episode. And on today's episode is Voyager, season 5, episode 15, Dark Frontier. I just want to apologize for being late. Normally not late, or not this late. Uh, and as they say, late and gay. So I guess it happens to everybody. And I was gonna do a stream on Friday where I play my guitar and all, but didn't get home from work in time. So apologize for that. I'll try to do one this weekend, but we'll see. And another thing I want to say is that um, I think last Thursday I talked about the Changeling from the original series, and I mentioned something about the shields like snapping on. Sulu says the shield snapped on, and they come on automatically. And I think what it is that the captain can call for red alert, and a red alert automatically raises shields. But again, there's no consistency in TOS anyway. It's not till later where they become more consistent. So I still, in the situation, I still don't know, like, uh because the captain did not call for red alert at that time, but the shields came on out automatically. So it's still kind of up in the air on how all of that works. The reason I bring that up is because it's probably something that I should know. And I probably sounded like a dumbass last week talking about it, and and didn't know. And then there was a clip of Starfleet Academy where a lot of people were complaining about, where she calls for red alert, and they're getting attacked, and she doesn't call for shields or whatever. Or so I don't know. That Starfleet Academy trailer was kind of ridiculous. There was a lot of things going on. They were talking about being they're getting hit from behind, and she calls for forward shields. I read a lot of comments. There's a lot of comments that Paramount has apparently left up in that 4 minute Starfleet Academy clip. But uh, all I can say about that is that it looks ridiculous. Critical drinker made a short video about it, about how the bridge layout is like everybody's like so far apart. So you practically have to yell across the room to, for anything, as opposed to, like, he pointed out the Wrath of Khan. You have the captain's chair and then the Khan. Uh, Pretty close together. I mean, in TOS, same. Those bridges, and then to me, it looks like it's no different from what we've seen in Strange New Worlds or uh, Picard. It doesn't look like it's 1,000 years in the future. And it just in the Doctor, he's not speaking like the Doctor that we know, and he, and I'm afraid he's gonna get some really bad lines, some teenagery lines, CW lines. Uh, what else was in the trailer? Something. He says something about how there's no casualties when he means fatalities, and just different things. But enough about that. I'm here to talk about Star Trek Voyager, Season 5, Episode 15, Dark Frontier. And the reason why I was so late is because this is I guess on Paramount Plus, it's considered one episode, but it's really a two-parter. So it went longer than I was expecting, and I apparently watched both parts because I went to see what the next episode is, and it's just a regular episode. So it was supposed to be a two-parter, turned into on Paramount Plus. It's all one episode. So and it looks like Michelle Fairy Tales is here and Gavin Blackburn's here, and apparently, since I was here on Thursday, am I muted? I'm muted. Can you hear me now? How am I muted? What the hell is going on? Hold on. I'm not muted. Put a 1 in the chat if you can hear me, and a 2 if you can't. Oh, your browser crashed. Okay, all right. I was like, what? How am I muted? Because the only way I can mute is this. That's the only way I can mute. So, uh, okay. This is now we're 15 minutes in. Okay. So the Borg. This this episode starts off with you get the Borg's point of view. You're on a Borg vessel. You see through the Borg's eyes, and you're on a Borg vessel, and you hear another Borg talking to the Borg, the audience Borg, I guess, that we're seeing, and giving them instructions on what to do. And they come across Voyager, and they contact Voyager and give the spiel. You know, you're going to be assimilated, and we see Janeway on the bridge, and they basically beam in a torpedo on board this Borg vessel, and it blows up the ship. And then we switch back to Voyager, and they were trying to, they didn't want to destroy it because they were trying to get information from it. And and it's like a cigar shaped Borg. So Janeway tells them to salvage the remains of the ship. So that's the teaser, and then we go back to Voyager, and the probe, or Chakotay tells, says that it was just a probe, and that we were lucky this time, um, and that they they're salvaging through the probe, and the doctor finds like this surgical tool, like the arm that has all the little scissors and all that stuff on it, and the drills and the lasers and scalpels and all. He wants to keep it, and then uh, I think they find Seven finds like this data nodule, which contains like tactical information and stuff like that. And then they're looking for they find a trans warp coil, but it's too heavily damaged. So they just take what they can get and head back to Voyager. And the only question I had at this point was like, how do they have breathable oxygen on this section of the ship? And it's unless they have a force field that I didn't see, because I wasn't, maybe I didn't catch that part. But anyway, Tom and Harry go to the mess hall where Tom points out that it was Harry's idea to send the torpedo, but Harry's like, well, we didn't want to blow it up, we just needed some information. And Tom says, well, there's just mindless drones, what does it matter? At that point, Seven walks into the mess hall and gives them a dirty look, or Tom a dirty look, and he says, sorry, I didn't mean to offend you. And she says that you can't offend a mindless drone, so she gets pissed off about that. And then the information that they gather is that off this node is that there's 3 cubes 9 light years away, and there's a sphere, a scout ship, which is heavily damaged, which is closer by, and is it currently regenerating in regeneration mode. So in the conference center, or whatever you want to call that, the conference center, it's the conference room. Sorry. Welcome to Voyager Conference Center. We host senators from Romulan and blah blah blah. I don't know. Tom. Janeway is talking about Fort Knox, and Tuvok doesn't know what Fort Knox is, and she tells Tom to explain what it was and how it held gold, and that Fort Knox was never broken into. It was eventually turned into a museum after, in the late 21st century, after money was no longer a thing, and that that some Ferengis tried to break into it one time without success, and that basically their mission is to break into this Borg cube and steal the transwarp coil. And she says there's no margin for error. So the whole time that Janeway's talking about this, the magic meeting room, right, there we go. The whole time Janeway's talking about this plan, Seven is sort of has this worried look on her face, or sort of kind of like she's not sure about this whole thing. And she's at the end of the meeting, Janeway talks to her about it, and she says that it's a bold plan and that it could work. And then Janeway has this a pad with this information that they got from Starfleet about Seven's parents and how they had been tracking the Borg. And she says for 2 years, and Seven corrects her and says for 3 years they were tracking the Borg. And Janeway wants Seven to go over this information that they got over the records and try to see if there's anything that they can use. And initially, Seven's against it and says that they were the Hansons were assimilated, which is her name, Annika Hansen, and that it's insufficient details, and Janeway pushes the SU and basically kind of tricks her into it, but so then she agrees to it, and then Neelix comes to the cargo hold where where her alcove is, and is talking about his family and how he wishes that he could speak to his family, and that the only thing he has left of his family is a fading hollow image. So that kind of is like a push for her to kind of go into these records and find out more about her family, because she doesn't really remember. She was young when she was assimilated. So they flash back, and it's Annika is her name, and she's playing with this model of a Borg cube, to where her father says is not a toy, and it's called the USS Raven. I thought it said Raiden at first, like from Mortal Kombat, and then I was like, that wouldn't make much sense. And then he says it a couple more times, and it's Raven. Okay, that makes more sense. And they're tracking a Borg. They've been tracking the Borg for 6 weeks and haven't found anything yet, and start to believe that maybe the Borg are just a rumor. So, is this before Q Who? Is this before, or is this like after? I mean, it'd have to be after Q Who, right? So Annika comes in and into the little office and says that she can't sleep, and her mom is kind of holding her, and then they detect a ship. They finally detect a Borg cube, and it's scanning for life sign, or scans the ship, and goes on its way. And what they had suspected was that if they ignore life forms until they are considered a threat or a target, and they match the course and speed with this Borg cube, and then it switches back to the Voyager, and 7 and 9 is called to the bridge by Chakotay, and they're approaching this sphere that they're looking for. And they have 72 hours until the sphere gets its the transwarp back online. On board the sphere, Seven and Janeway have 1 minute and 35 seconds. They're to get to the coil, and they're six seconds behind schedule. And Tuvok's pointing out where Harry is to put charges on the shield generator. That's not what they call it. They call it that in Star Wars, and that's what's in my head. And then it turns out to be a holodeck simulation, because they get assimilated by the Borg. And there were 12 seconds. I think it was Chakotay says they were 12 seconds too late. So Seven is or Janeway's talking to Seven in the corridors, and and she's talking to Seven about how she seems nervous and she seems a little bit off, and she's worried that she's not going to be able to go through this this mission. And then she proceeds on back to the cargo hold, where then Naomi Wildman shows up, and she talks about how she has a bad dream, and that in her dream she can see Borg stuff everywhere, and that her mom had told her about the mission, and how they get assimilated, and Seven assures her that it's just a nightmare, and then no, Naomi starts asking all these weird questions about the Borg and make her uncomfortable, and uh, then you see one of those spikes come through her cheek, and basically what it is the Borg Queen is contacting Seven through her mind, and nobody else can hear her. Wants her to rejoin the collective, and that she would spare Voyager if she does. Then it flashes back to the USS Raven, and they've now made it to the Delta Quadrant. So I don't know how long that takes, but I guess if they're matching the Borg cube, I don't know, but you would think it would take a long time, wouldn't it? Unless I guess they're behind them in the trans warp conduit. And so the father is, I forget his name, he's on board the Borg cube, and he has like this bio, uh, like a bio dampener. Can't read my own handwriting. I don't know how many times I've said that, but I've said it a lot. A bio dampener, and it's losing power, and so it's basically like a camouflage. It dampens their signature, their biosignature, so they can be on the Borg cube and study the Borg. And then Seven explains this to Tuvok, who likens it to camouflage. Then the Doctor is talking to Seven, and she gets irritated with him because he says something along the lines that like this information is very useful, and she says that they were assimilated and they failed, and she gets frustrated and walks away. So then we get another captain's log where Janeway calls it Operation Fort Knox, and Seven and Janeway are talking in her ready room, and again Janeway's worried about this mission, and tells Seven that she's going to reassign her to the bridge. To which Seven says, that she's needed on the mission. They need her, and that it would be inefficient use of her time to be on the bridge. And then Janeway says that B'Elanna can take her spot, and that they would be fine. And then she also says that a lot of people have noticed that she's been agitated and preoccupied lately, and like she said, looks nervous. And then Seven assures her that she's fine, and that that she needs to be on this mission, and that she, 2 years ago, when she was freed from the collective, she's become accustomed to this crew and feels like that they are her collective now. And uh, doesn't tell Janeway about the conversation with the Borg Queen. And then Janeway agrees to let her go. So then back on the Borg spear, this the shuttle, they're using the shuttle as decoy, so they can beam in and get the warp transwarp coil, and then the shuttle is detected, but they ignore it. So they're not taking the bait, basically, which Chakotay says. And then Janeway tells them to increase the warp signature. That would get them to want to assimilate the shuttle. And so they take it. They take the shuttle, and the shields go down just quick enough so they can beam into the sphere. And then Tuvok tells Harry to set the spatial charges and on the shield generator. I guess they do call it a shield generator. And they set the charges. It blows up. The target is obtained. They beam the transwarp coil out of there. And then right as they're about to leave, the Borg Queen contacts Seven again. And Janeway is trying to get Seven to come up, get out of there, and so they can meet at the rendezvous point and then beam out of there. And then, but Seven says she's staying behind. And Janeway points the phase rifle at her and says, that's an order. You're coming. She says no, she can't. She's staying behind. She wants to rejoin the collective. And then Janeway says, well, then I'm staying too. And Seven tells her that she'll be assimilated. And then a force field pops up and stops Janeway from chasing after Seven. And then Seven is escorted away by Borg drones, and Janeway has to meet up with Tuvok and Harry, and they beam out of there. And then Chakotay asks where Seven is, and she says that she'll explain later. Then the spear joins the cube, and we see like this big, like, hive, I guess is what you would call it, of like different Borg cubes and stuff all connected together. It's like their hideout. The bad guy lair here, like Bugs Bunny. So then she's escorted to the Queen's chamber, and the Queen says, "Welcome home." Now I'm guessing that's where the part 1 ends. But I ended up watching the whole freaking thing because I didn't realize that on Paramount Plus it was going to do the whole thing. I thought it was going to cut off, because if you watch The Menagerie, it cuts off. If you watch other two-parters, it cuts off. So I don't know what the hell's up with that. So anyway, and I've talked about this in the past, but if there were a Borg cube or Borg origin, I've always said, what if it was like a Elon Musk or whatever that creates it, and that's sort of what the Borg Queen is. And then I think this is the return of the Borg Queen since first contact. So this was at the time people thought, well, once you kill the queen, that's it. The Borg is dead. But obviously, we've seen the Borg before, and this is the return of the Borg queen. And it's kind of reminded me of Foundation, which I had watched earlier this year, or I actually got caught up recently, where you have the Cleons and the clones, and they constantly clone each other. Um, I guess it's kind of like what the Borg Queen does. Is they of course, somehow Palpatine returned. Anyway, that was just a thought that um, came to my mind, and then so then she tells Seven that they built an alcove for her, and then back on Voyager, in the engine room, they're attaching the transwarp coil, and she B'Elanna tells Janeway that she had went through some of Seven's personal files and was able to get more information about the Hansons and how the transwarp coil works and stuff. And Janeway tells her to not do that again, and that you know, and that she's a part of the crew. And B'Elanna questions that because it looks like she betrayed the crew, but then Janeway's like, well, we don't know that. We don't know what happened and why she did what she did. So so far there's no sign of Borg activity. Janeway is talking to Chakotay, wondering like why now? Why would she leave now? And Chakotay reminds Janeway that when they first like got her from the collective, deborgified her, as I say, that she told them she was going to eventually betray them. And Janeway says that there's been plenty of opportunities, why now? And then she's in her ready room, and she's looking over subspace, going over sensor data, and or sensor logs. And there's like subspace fluctuations that keep coming up. And so she tells the computer to compare those subspace fluctuations. And then Tuvok interrupts and says that there's a crew member that wants her attention, and it's Naomi Wildman again. And Naomi Wildman has a rescue plan that she wants to rescue Seven, and asks Janeway if she's given up, and Janeway says that there's 3 things to remember about a Starfleet captain, or that a Starfleet captain has to remember, is to keep your shirt tucked in, go down with the ship, and never abandon a member of the crew. So the computer says that put my glasses on again, the transspectral analysis is complete, and it turns out it was a Borg communications. So it seems to Janeway, that somehow the Borg Queen was communicating with Seven, like a couple nights before the mission. So back on the cube, the Queen tells Seven that she needs to abandon her emotions, and that she wants Seven to help assimilate humanity, and that the then we hear a noise, and Seven asks what that was, and the cube is on its way to assimilate a new species. So back on the flashback on the Raven, they're categorizing species, and they have a drone on board, and it's about to go back into regeneration mode. So they put a tracking device on it, and it turns out that it was part of Unimatrix 1, which means it might have been in contact with the Queen. So they find the Queen's back on Voyager. They find the Queen's comm signals, and they use the Delta Flyer and they add the transwarp core to the Delta Flyer to find Seven. And on board the Delta Flyer is Tom, Janeway, and the Doctor. And the Doctor said, or Janeway says, to steady as she goes, and full speed ahead, which of course are nautical terms, which we don't hear much in New Trek because they don't know. I don't think any of them served in the military and probably know those terms, even if they did, or just they don't know. They don't know functions of the ship. They don't know any kind of military terms. They don't know how the military functions. They don't know how the ship works. They just know words, and they put them together and hope that nobody notices. So then the board queen asks Seven for tactical advice as they're attempting to assimilate this new species, and Seven is giving the tactical advice, and then their shields go down, and they're about to be be destroyed, and she asks Seven, what should they do to adapt, and she doesn't want to say because she doesn't want to help them all, but they're about to be destroyed. So she tells the Queen, "Why don't you tell me?" And the Queen says, "No, I want you to tell me what we should do to adapt, and we're about to be destroyed." And so under pressure, she comes up with an idea, and which is exactly what the Queen was thinking of doing, and they adapt and easily assimilate this species. So then she tells 709 to help with repairing the shields. So as she's doing that, she's hearing people being screaming and being assimilated, and she sees one guy actually get stabbed and assimilated with the nanobots and stuff, and finds a group of people that are still haven't been assimilated, and there's a Borg drone working on one of them, turns it off and helps them escape, and they escape on a ship where there's already dead people that have died, and the Borg is not paying any attention to them. And then goes back to the Queen, and the Queen realizes that something was off, and also tells Seven that she should be enjoying this, and Seven gets mad and says that 300,000 individuals were just assimilated, and I'm supposed to be enjoying this. And then the Queen finds the ship that Seven helped escape, and uh, puts the tractor beam on it, and is about to assimilate them, bring them into the ship, into the cube, and Seven begs her to not do it. That it's only 4 people. It's not efficient. They're not. And the Queen says, "Well, if I allow them to escape, they'll be able to resist us in the future." And she's begs her to not do it, and then at the last second lets them go, and then turns to the board queen and says that I thought that compassion was irrelevant. Then we get a flashback back to the Raven, and it's taken major damage. They're masking their warp signature, and there's a cube on their trail. Then back on Voyager, the Doctor goes to Janeway and says that he's figured out a way that he can send a message, and that only she would be able to hear it. And then the flyer approaches the hive, and then the Queen shows a diagram of a human, like a hologram of a human, and says that she needs Seven to help her figure out how to assimilate humanity, because the first time. So this is after first con. Okay. The first time didn't work, and Seven refuses. She doesn't want to help, but the Queen says that she'll be assimilated if she doesn't help. So threatens to take away her individuality, and she's constantly telling her to abandon her emotions, that they're a distraction. And the plan this time, and she points out the species is 5618. That's us. So we are species 5618, and she plans to detonate a charge in Earth's atmosphere with a virus full of nanobots that would get into people's systems, and over years assimilate them, and by the time they realized that they were being assimilated, it'd be too late. Which is kind of like the Picard season 3, with all the youth being assimilated, like they had like a virus. I don't know if Terry Matalas went back and watched this episode and to get some ideas, and that's how he came up with that idea, but I thought it was very similar. So Seven, as they're having this confrontation and stuff, she says that Voyager is her family, and the Queen says no, her family's here, and we see Seven's dad, who's been assimilated as a drone. And then Seven receives the message from Janeway saying that they're on their way to rescue her, and that that her father had came up with multi-adaptive shielding, which they adapted into their system, and so that's how they're able to come up with that's how they're able to do that. And then Tuvok says that there's a chamber where Seven is located. Oh yes, Tuvok's with him too. There's a chamber where Seven's located, but it's heavily shielded. But they can beam into a different area of the cube, and they have this the camouflage stuff with them. And there's and the at this point they don't know where the flyer's at, and they are just firing blindly. Janeway finds Seven in this chamber and has her phaser rifle pointed at the Queen. But the Queen has like her shielding on, her personal shields, and they're able to get the shielding down, but the Queen brings it right back up, and then Seven tells her to shoot at this thing above the Queen, and that takes down the shielding, and they're able to beam out of there and go to transwarp. So then a spear chases after them and attacks the flyer, and then Voyager is able to collapse the transwarp conduit, but at the same time, the transwarp coil gives out. But they were able to gain 15. They're like 15 years closer to Earth. They were able to shave 15 years off of their voyage. So had I had known that this was going to be all one part, I would have started it earlier. I had to kind of rush towards the end so I could make the show on time, and I still didn't make the show on time. I was like 7 minutes late, and so anyway, that's that episode. I thought it was as a whole, another 7 out of 10, maybe 7.5, just because we get background story on Seven and how she got assimilated and her family and all that stuff. But as Gavin Blackburn has pointed out in the past, the Borg were too easily defeated. The Queen could have killed them at any time in classic like Bond style. She's telling the plan. She's again, it's in Austin Powers. Why just shoot them? Just kill them. Just kill them right there. They're right there. Just kill them. So that aspect of the episode is kind of dumb, but it's for dramatic effect. I get it. But yeah, she could have killed him at any time. I do like, I remember when this came out, but barely. But I've seen it a bunch since then. I said the other day that I recognized the title, but I didn't realize it was a two-parter. Anyway, let's see what's being said out in the chat, and then we'll go to tomorrow's episode, whatever that may be. So again, Gavin Blackburn said he was his browser crashed. The magic meeting room, I caught that one. Great parents dragging your child to Borg space. I know. That's what makes it kind of ridiculous in the first. But you got to figure a way. How did Seven get assimilated? Well, maybe she was on a starship that got assimilated. I got assimilated during Wolf 5. The attack. Could have been multiple other ways than having parents that are curious about the Borg. It's kind of stupid. And Michelle Fairy Tales agrees. Terrible parenting. Gavin says, I'm willing to accept the odd plot hole, but New Trek is all plot hole. Yeah, it's very unfortunate. I wanted to give Strange New Worlds a chance, and I did, but it's just too much. Star Trek, the Academy show. I was told today that I hated. That I was hating on. Oh no, that was Supergirl. Sorry, I was told today that I was hating on Supergirl, the movie that's coming out, because the poster says truth, justice, and whatever. No, I don't hate the movie, and I don't hate the actress. I haven't seen the movie yet, so I can't hate it. But that's the way people are these days. She could have been on one of the colonies from the neutral zone. Actually, that would have been a perfect way to, because that neutral zone episode, uh, does it? Do they specifically say Borg, or that's from the end of season two, right? Or is it season one? Is it end of season two? They heavily imply that there's something there, and then I think that somehow got retconned into it being a Borg attack. They said we were hating on Super. I didn't. And you thought it was shite. I thought it was okay, but too jokey and too James Gunny. Uh, I didn't hate it, but I haven't watched it since. I mean, it's been on HBO Max now for months, and I haven't gone back and watched it. If I had to, and Chris Gore has been saying, and Gary said, the Snyderverse. I think Man of Steel is better. Is it? I don't know. I mean, Christopher Reeve is always the goat, and it's going to be hard to really, really come up with. Well, it's not hard if you just go back to the comic books and do it properly. But they, for some reason, for the past 40 freaking years, Superman is so hard to write. It's so hard to write a Superman movie. Except we did it. We did it, guys, already. It's already been done. Alright, anyway. But yeah, I hate the movie because I didn't like the poster. No, I didn't like the poster. That's it. How hard is it to say Truth American Way, or don't say it at all? If you're not going to put that there, then don't put any of it there. And Truth, Justice, and whatever. I don't even. I'm just a teenager, and I don't even care. Why am I even Supergirl in the first place? Anyway, I don't want to hold you guys too long. I'm Gavin. I messed up. This random generator is on Enterprise episode, but we're not going to do that episode. We're going to randomize it. Voyager, distant origin. I believe that's the lizard people. Lizard people, as Hecklefish would say. And I don't think that I've done that. So tomorrow, I will be doing Distant Origin, season 3, episode 23 of Voyager, because I had 2 weeks of non-Voyager, so the universe decided it's time to get back to Voyager, dude. You got to do it. Michelle Fairy Tales says she's so disappointed of TV and movies of late. Yeah, Superman was the first movie I've seen in theaters probably since either which came first, Oppenheimer or Flash, whichever the whichever was the last one. Um, yes, another Voyager episode. It's all right. I actually like Distant Origin. I wish they this Academy series has an opportunity to revisit some of the Delta Quadrant species that we met, including these guys, the lizard people, and of course they have a female Jim Hadar. Which are they going to are they even going to explain it? B, is it going to be lame and gay? Um, I'm guessing it'll be lame and gay. Anyway, I've kept I've kept my loyal fan base way too long, so I'm gonna go now. I'm gonna kick myself. I'm gonna I'm gonna tell myself to go away now, as the drinker would say. Uh, hopefully, we'll see. We'll see. I want to thank Gavin Blackburn and Michelle Fairy Tales for showing up. Sorry it was late. Hopefully tomorrow I'll be on time, and hopefully we'll see you two back here tomorrow, and maybe more people. I did gain a couple of subscribers the past few days. So I don't know. Maybe the algorithm's picking it up. Don't know. I want to thank you for coming by. Thank people that are lurking, if there are any lurkers, and anybody that sees this in the future. This has been the Red Hour, and we're almost at Red Hour 50. That'll be next week.